Ooh,
He's
Oh.
back.
and we're back.
Hey, I'm liking this season 2 thing.
Nope.
I'm not gonna hold you. I am. I really am.
You're having fun with it.
Really. And just jumping in because I'm excited, and I got the pleasure of welcoming our guest and bringing on our guest that we have today. And our guest is my brother Page. We met at the gathering spot in Atlanta. You know those people you just meet and you're like, nah, this dude's dope. This dude's dope. Not only is he in the Bruz Bay, familiar in the podcast space, and I just wanted to speak genuinely to the opportunities he's given me off the bat. I was on his podcast, Get My Cheese Off My Cracker. I was talking about education, something that y'all know is close to my heart. Then the state of the black man's mental health. And then you know how you tell somebody about something, and then all of a sudden they just jump in. And then he started listening in season 1 and showing love and just dropping gems about what he's heard from us. And then something really hit him about, I can't even remember what episode he was, but me and Kamau were talking about black men crying and never crying. And then Paige is like, woo, was really enjoying the conversation. And you know how we'd be switching gears. And he's like, nah, I need that. I need more of that. So for it to all come full circle, it be a year plus or however much it's been, and to have him on, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. That being said, how was everybody's day? Let's start off that because we were having a good conversation earlier about hair.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm blessed. Like I said, it's been an honor for you to reach out. And the crazy part about it was I reached out, like, are y'all gonna do guests at any time? And he was like, I don't know, we're gonna figure it out. And then boom, I'm in Dubai. Brother sending me a message like, yo, bro, will you be available on Thursday? I was like, all right, I just hope my flight lands in time so I can make it. And lo and behold, I was able to make it. So I definitely appreciate y'all.
Man, what's that time difference?
It's 8 hours. So Tunji and I trying to go back and forth in messaging. He'll hit me up at like anything past 12 o'clock. Anything past 3 o'clock is like midnight over there, past midnight over there. So I'm like, all right, well, he's just gonna get this in the morning. But we finally got it taken care of. So yeah, and it was adjustment, trying to wake
That's
up.
What I'm saying, yeah.
Up and manage people on this side of the coast. Oh man, like I had many messages go out at a certain time, and I'm like, oh man, it's like 3 a.m. They ain't not gonna get this. So it was interesting.
And bro sleeping on himself. My man's a soldier. Because I didn't even realize he was Dubai until like the second day of me messaging him. He's like, nah, bro. So number one, we both Qs, and he does another atomic travel. So my guy is a traveler. So I'm just getting used to, I guess, being a normal human being, and we talking back and forth. And he's like, bro, I'm in Dubai. It's 4 a.m. over here, 5 a.m. over here. And then he tried to finish having the conversation. I'm like, we'll talk tomorrow. Whenever
get your time back.
I'm committed, man. Look, my brother reached out and I was like, you know what? I'm not trying to disappoint. You know, you putting your name on the line for me. So I was like, you know what? I want to follow through. And that's what I try to do, is follow through as much as I can.
Man, that's a luxury to be able to travel as much as you are and be, in an entire different continent or country and still conduct the business where your roots are. And that really leads me back to Tunji's first question of how everybody's day was. Because Paige, I know with you, as much traveling and being immersed in other cultures, it can be uncomfortable. And don't want to speak for you, but it also might feel like sometimes that you might be maybe one of the less smart or less aware of someone else's culture in the room. And that brings me back to Tunji's question of how everybody's day was. And for this past week, I have been the less smart individual on a certain topic in a room. And that is uncomfortable. But I'm in America on a specific topic in my industry. But it is so uncomfortable and it is so humbling to not be the smartest in the room. But as though you're a traveling Page and you're being immersed in other cultures while taking care of your roots, that's still a blessing. So I wanted to kind of see how you all feel about this. Maybe add your travel experience, really Kamau and Page, adding your travel experience of being uncomfortable and might being the less, not the smartest in the room, but still knowing it's a blessing to be planted here and not be the smartest in the room, which I've been feeling in this week.
So I'll if you don't mind me jumping in real quick. I'm American born, Haitian American, right? My first trip to Haiti, I was about 6 years old. They call me what they call blanc, because blanc is like gringo or like, Yankee, whatever you want to call it. You're not from here. So being the person not from a particular place has kind of been my entire life's experience. And so I've learned to be uncomfortable, to be comfortable being uncomfortable in certain spaces. And so when I travel, it's always been a matter of, I have to respect people's culture because I know where I come from. I know where I come from. I can't go into my mom's house or my grandmother's house or my grandfather's house with my shoes on, right? I gotta greet every elder in the house. So I go about things, learning cultures or understanding different cultures before I even head out. So at the end of the day, it's not necessary about being the smartest or being the most aware. It's being respectful. So whenever you enter a room respectful, head up, look people in the eye where it's acceptable, right? Back straight, confident. No one's gonna mess with you. No one's gonna think otherwise. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's a fake it till you make it type of world, right? You present yourself in a particular way. You might be scared and nervous on the inside. The world don't need to know. And that's kind of how I've moved myself around. Like, I've been able to learn to be comfortable in spaces that people expect me to be uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, if they don't know you're uncomfortable, they don't. I tell people a lot of times on my show, I suffer from anxiety. And a lot of times when I'm on these shows, I am sweating underneath the 2 layers of clothes. So I don't want you to see me sweating. So I'm doing these shows for an hour on end and I'm panicking to not mess up the entire time. You know what I mean? So that's me living through the process of, you know what, I need to make sure these things work. And that's with everything that I do. I try not to show these things, but work through it and not allow them to be kind of a hindrance, if that makes sense.
I love the respect piece, because I think that's so well put. I had an experience a couple weeks back where I've been like frequently going to the hood of this part of town that I live in. And what's funny about it is just like, you recognize a hood no matter where it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm in Mexico, but I know this is the hood just because it's that feeling, And it's the same thing when you're in Oakland and you're somebody else's hood, or you're in Compton and you're in somebody else's hood, or you're in Atlanta and you're in somebody's hood. Like, no matter what hood you're in, like, there's a certain way that you should act when you're in a hood. And it really, the person that you're with, you got it. Like, I was trying to remind my girl, I was like, this is your hood. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just walking, you hitting the corners, you hitting the side streets. And I'm like, on a swivel, like following. But it was just an interesting phenomenon to be in somebody else's hood, because it's an experience that I'm familiar with. Like, people talk different ways in different hoods across America. You go in, you sit on somebody's house, in a trap house, you're just chilling, right? Like, you got to have a confidence about yourself that, like, I'm not weak, I'm not a sucker. But at the same time, like, I'm respect. This is y'all hood. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not in here trying to dictate shit. Like, I'm not going to come too flashy. I'm not going to come too loud. Like, I'm just going to be cool, calm, collective, and just keep my head on a swivel. And it was an interesting phenomenon. And I think, I don't know if other cultures see it the same way. As like, we call it like, yo, this is your hood. This is my hood. Like, when you come to my hood, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to eat. This is where we're going to go, And it's that same, I think people have that same feeling about the places that they're from. And when you can, I guess, release the fear and more just like approach it with a level of like respect and just honor, that like, even though this might look like a piece of shit to you, like, this is somebody's home. This is where somebody's roots are. This is where somebody's family and the stories and the history lies, right? And so, like, you walk different when I feel like when you approach the land that way.
And I want to add to that, right? So I travel, and you guys put it out there. I travel a decent amount, right? And when I travel with groups, um, one of my biggest pet peeves are people going to certain countries expecting first world experiences, right? Um, and that will turn them off from the culture. But once again, if we're talking about respect, go in understanding a little bit about the country or the hood or the areas that you're going to, because that will make or break your overall experiences. Because expecting the United States quality of things everywhere around the world is almost impossible. Otherwise, if that's what you're expecting, you're paying top dollar. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What when y'all talked, I thought about so many different things. First of all, Zuri, your question, like, how are you doing? Right? My mind went to, especially with you traveling, going around the world page, my mind went to how is it how has it been being black for you lately in all
Oh,
these different
man.
spaces, right? And then my mind went to, okay, how is it being a black man for you in all these different spaces? Zuri, how is it being a black woman for you in all these different spaces? Because it's different. And then when you said blah page, that hit me so hard because I realized I'm a stranger in just about every home I go to. When I go back to Nigeria, I don't speak Yoruba. I'm an American boy. I sat on a flight home like in 2017. I didn't speak a word to anybody. Right when I stood up to grab my bag, my man bumped my shoulder. He's like, American boy. I didn't
Mm.
talk yet. I didn't talk yet. I was bugging. I was like, but they know. They
Mm.
know.
It's your swagger, it's your dress,
Mm.
it's your the fact you weren't talking to somebody. Like, it's the simple things. Like, I wasn't even talking this one time, and I was like, "You're not from around here, huh?" I was like, "How'd you know?" He's like, "I can see it from all the way down the street." I was like,
Yeah,
"Bruh."
yeah.
Dang.
So
And they're vicious with it. So my apologies, Tunji.
no, you good. I was just saying that that's why it's so important to realize we are like immigrants. Everything that you are going into these spaces. That's why it's so much. So to me, it's so important to have that confidence in who I am and who I want to be in these pieces of myself. And like Kamau said, go into everybody's hoods when they live there with the sense of I have something to learn. I have something to receive. Yes, I have value. I add value, but I'm here to get value, right? This culture has something for me, like gems for me to get. And I think that's kind of like the perfect segue into Zuri's segment on like culture, like the different pieces of just blackness.
Now for sure. And I would go to the segment, but I have to hop back to what
talk, talk.
I'm on fire to
Yeah.
something Kamau said. Hey, you really about respecting someone else's hood. The first thing that came to my mind, y'all, is to respect someone else's hood, to respect someone else's environment. You first have to respect and appreciate your hood and where you come from. And I think a lot of times we look for, especially Black people, we look for that validation in someone else's hood, in someone else's environment, for where we come from, to make sure that we might be tough enough, we might be beautiful enough, we might be strong
Come
enough,
on now.
we might be cool enough. But once you accept your hood for whatever it is, wherever God planted you to maybe grow up, to be planted in, another hood as you continue to thrive, you have to appreciate your hood first and find the beauty and find your happy place within your environment and your hood. And once you travel, I feel like the world is a little bit brighter. It shines a lot brighter. And even if someone might be pointing at you because of antiques on your body, you appreciate where you come from. So whether you're laughing at something that I love. So really, you the fool. So you have to continue to find what you love about your hood. And I just
And
had to say that. So
So
as we go into it,
to add to that, right? Like, I don't want people to think travel means like going across the pond or going to islands. It's like, yo, it's going hood to hood. I know some people who haven't seen another hood in their own city. I know people who haven't been downtown in their own city or the aquarium in their own city. Travel does not have to equate to this huge check. It's like, yo, let me go check another section of the city If you're from
That's
Brooklyn, let me go check out Queens. Let me go check out Manhattan. Let me go to White Plains. I think when we think of travel, and one of the things I like to expound on is like, yo, my parents weren't rich to send me to Haiti every year. We went upstate New York to the Catskills. You know what I mean? It was a work bus trip with all of the work kids and the parents taking a bus up to the Catskills. So you ain't got to go anywhere extravagant. Just leave your hood. Leave your hood, experience somebody else's hood. And that could be the suburbs. You know what I mean? But that's that person's hood. You know what I mean? So just experience something different. It doesn't have to be extravagant.
Thanks. It definitely is different worlds in a city, in small vicinities. So that's powerful. So to hop into our first segment is called Pivot into Purpose. And if this is your first time listening or your 30th time listening, Pivot into Purpose is a segment where we invite the culture into our brand of pivoting, but also proceeding in that same breath. A lot of times when you listen to this podcast, us three co-hosts, and when we bring on guests, we'll be talking about our personal journeys of how we might have pivoted, but also was yearning for a proceed in our life. Today, we're going to speak on a guy by the name of Jonathan Majors. He is taking the movie scene and the show scene by storm. Phenomenal, phenomenal talent. But what a lot of people don't know is he travels with a mug, like a cup, a mug in his hand everywhere he goes, everywhere he travels, where it's an interview, whether it's an award show, he always has a mug in his hand. And I don't really know if it's something in the mug, but today we're going to talk on the piece of his why. And why I saw this mug story so powerful is a lot of times we talk about pivoting within a purpose. We talk about the journey of getting to the purpose. But see, this story made me question what happens when you're standing in your purpose, but you have to continue to be grounded in your purpose. How do you stay grounded in your purpose? How do you stay grounded in pivoting and staying in your purpose? And this was his answer when somebody asked him why he carries a mug. He said, because he's a vessel, and that this cup is a reminder to never let anyone else fill your cup or pour you out. You can only fill yourself up and you can only pour yourself out. And he ended saying, you have to mind your own cup. And I feel like there are so many variations. There are so many stories, and you could just hear, that pain was also a part of the reason why he carries this cup. So what I want to challenge my other co-hosts for this episode is to maybe think of the time when you get to your purpose, or if you believe you're standing in your purpose now, how do you mind your cup? How do you continue to be a vessel and mind your own cup, and to only make sure that you're filling yourself up?
That's a deep one. So I want to say, man, this was one of my lowest points. I was living alone in Jersey. I got this was literally moving into corporate America. Decided to move out on my own because I wanted my independence, and I got to a point where I was barely paying my rent. I was barely paying my car note. I was backdated in credit card debt, and something told me, like, you really need to change things up. And what I ended up doing was moving back home for about 6 months to get my life together. And in that process of the 6 months, I was able to assess my finances, figure out how to adjust things. Long story short, I put myself in a path to where I am today. I wasn't always able to travel, right? My stories of travel or asking people about travel really came from a place of not being able to. Not being able to travel, not being able to get a flight to Miami if I wanted to, not being able to just do things. I was stuck at home. I was literally stealing Wi-Fi from my neighbors because I didn't pay my internet bill. You know what I mean? I was working from home with no internet, so I couldn't work from home. Like, that's how bad it was. And it was because I was poorly managing my funds. Financial literacy wasn't something that was really passed down to me and my family. So it was something that I had to learn the hard way. And fast forward from that scenario, I was able to buy my first house in 4 years from that point. I was able to get on a plane and go to South Africa from years from that point. I was able to get a brand new car from years from that point. And I say all that to say was, having learned from those experiences, I was able to pass that information down to others, because I've learned that my mission in life is to serve others through information, right? Whether it's a podcast, whether it's just, what we were talking about earlier, like, what tools are you using? I'm not a fan of gatekeeping information. And if I can continue to unsolicitedly provide tools to my brothers and sisters to help move them to the next level, that's literally what I'm about. And as we move forward, I go from an IT security environment to the podcast world. And for me, the podcast world is about generating conversation and building and learning about one another in a way that we can tell a group of people about somebody they would have never met before in their lives. And hopefully that person have had an impact on their lives. So I'm all about using that experience to kind of propel me, motivate me to do better, so I can help others do better, so that us as a people can do better together, And like I said, during the live, we all we got. If we can't be here to support one another, what is this life really about?
That's heat. And I love that do better for me. So and sharing that information, do better for us, and then we all do better. And mine is kind of the same. I come in, what my mind went to when we thought about that cup is that the vessel piece. Kevin Gates said in an interview that takers always recognize the givers, right? And I know I'm a giver. And I would interject and say that givers recognize givers as well.
Facts.
And my dad died about 2 weeks ago, and I've been reflecting a lot on everything he's ever told me. And it's one of those situations where givers recognize givers. And we're having a conversation. I was really going through it. This is when I was still going through my divorce. And I think that may be the first time I'm sharing that on the podcast as well, too. And my dad sat me down and we were just talking about everything. And he shared it in Yoruba, but I don't know how to say it that way, but I'll say it in English. He said, you know how in Africa, like women carry the loads on their head, right? And they balance it perfectly. And it just looks like automatic. It looks like magic. He's like, it's not magic. You have to balance the load on your head first before you help anybody else. And I shared this the other day. He also said that you are blessed to bless, right? So it's finding balance. He said, just like that cup, like you have to keep an open hand. God will put blessings in your hand, and every portion of that blessing, like there's portions of the blessing that are meant for other people. Life will be hard and life will be great. In hard times and great times, great men never close their hand. No matter how little they have in there or how much, a portion will always go out for someone else. So that's the thing, like to find that balance between getting your load straight yourself so you can keep that open hand and help someone else, but never getting that fear to be like, okay, like to put the lid on my cup. When my cup is full, be like, nah, let's keep it full. You get greedy, like that fear of, nah, this is the perfect amount. But you have to be willing to risk, okay, if there's a little in my cup, some is still meant for somebody else. If my cup is full, some is still meant for somebody else. So those words still ring in my head today, like chasing that balance in my cup.
I find this analogy so fascinating, because I feel like when you find alignment in your life, whereas that I've been blessed with an ability to do something, I've been blessed with a gift, I discover what I'm good at, And then you find a market for it. You find people who desire what you need or desire what you can offer and will pay you for it and want to bring you all over the country or all over the world, or, and, you know, bring you on platforms to kind of expose you. You get into a mode of like performance and of service, where it's just like you're just churning, you know. It's a lot of energy that you're exuding to be you, right, and to show up as fully as you can for these new people who are experiencing you, right. And it's just like showing the world like, this is who I am, and I want to serve y'all. I think the challenge that every single one of these people who have done this, right? And even you in your individual lives, if you found a place in your life where you found like, damn, I'm cooking and people want this and I'm doing it, you'll find that you'll reach a point of exhaustion. And for me, what that looked like is almost a sense of victimhood. Like, damn, like these people, like they just keep asking, like they just keep wanting, like they just need me so much. They just like, why is this? They're reliant. Why is the demand? Like, and it's these questions where you start being upset. You know, you're like, what about me though? Like, what about the time where I get to get right? You know, I'm serving all these other people, but like I don't even got time for me. And I think the thing that you'll realize is that only you can control that. Only you can take the moment to create that time for yourself. Only you can manage your load enough to the point where like you can sustain this. And I think a lot of times when we first touch that, we get excited by the reality that this is actually happening, and we forget the self-care piece. We forget the cup piece. We forget, you know, the thing that is fueling you. And you know, for me, this is something I'm going through this week, like right now, and it's a stage, you know, it's definitely a stage of life where it's like I really got to prioritize self-care. Like and not only do I just got to prioritize it to feel good, but I got to prioritize it in order for me to continue blessing other people. Like in order to show up to give y'all what y'all need, like I gotta invest into me. And I've neglected that, you know. And so I really respect this principle that he has, you know, and it's this reminder, because throughout different stages of life, that demand can increase. The demand of the world can increase on you. And so to have this cup, this reminder that it's like, you know, it is my responsibility to fill this thing. I can't expect the people that I'm serving to fill it. I can't expect anybody else to serve it or to even notice it's low. It's your responsibility.
Yeah, man, Mike is on fire from all perspectives. And to end out this segment, I want to actually add one more piece to it that when you all were talking, I kind of had a revelation about. It's about laying your roots. And I feel with this analogy of minding your cup, when Jonathan Majors, you know, if he calls it made it, or he's, you know, now in his purpose on this grand stage, it seems as though this mind your cup analogy and him holding on to his mug is also a symbol of him planting roots in his purpose. And that's almost a parallel to your point, Paige, of how you went back to your roots and how you had to move home for a little bit to get your mental right, to get you back on the path to pivot into your purpose as well, Paige. So I just want to leave everyone with this piece, whether you have to retract back to your roots to stay with loved ones, to get you on track to pivot into your purpose, or you have finally pivoted into your purpose. It is also good and a part of your well-being to plant those roots and to have, you know, those sayings, or go back to what your mother or your father, as Tunji said, to plant those roots in your mental and in your heart to always stick with you, to make sure that you didn't work your butt off to get to your purpose, just not to be grounded, just not to plant your roots, to stay there in that garden where you bloom and where you're planted at that moment.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Well, on the next stop on this train, we are headed to How Should I Proceed? We got a good one today. So without further ado, well, let me just explain real quick how it goes. I'm going to read a prompt from a listener that, took the time to be vulnerable with us, to explain something that they're facing in their own life as they're trying to figure out how to pivot and how to proceed. And we appreciate every time that somebody takes a step, right, in the thinking that, to the degree that I can be blessed and I can hone my blessings, I can bless others. And through exposure and through sharing these perspectives and these stories and these real life stuff, right, it takes this tangible, this theoretical stuff we're talking about and actually puts it into real life. So I'm going to read a prompt. Each of my running mates here is going to go. I'm going to time them, giving them a 60-second cap on the piece of advice or, wisdom that they want to drop. And the bell will go off. So let's get it. From a writer. My wife and I just found out we're pregnant after the doctor told us that it wasn't possible due to her having recently come off birth control. We're in complete shock, and I haven't been able to sleep for days. The hardest part for me is the lack of mental preparation. I'm a neat freak and a control freak. I like everything to be planned and prepared. But the way this played out, I feel like I had no control. The anxiety is coming and I'm getting scared. We're not financially prepared, nor is our housing situation ready for a newborn. It's hard to focus right now. It's hard to be a good husband to a pregnant wife. I have so many questions and not enough answers. How should I proceed?
It's tough. Lean into it. At the end of the day, this book of life has not been written for any of us, and we're all figuring it out as we go. I remember my nephew was born when I was 11. Unfortunately, my sister passed when I was 12. And I had to step up to be a man and help raise this kid as a kid. You don't know what you're doing. You're not going to know what you're doing. You're going to have people giving you advice. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be nothing that's going to work for you. But at the end of the day, I say lean into it, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to learn who you are. You're going to learn how strong your relationship is. And you're going to realize you guys are going to rely on each other more than you think. That's it.
Nice. Under 60. Ooh, that was nice.
I'll hop in. My maximum will be sometimes growth is thrust upon us. You said you're a control freak. Like, that's something you really can't be with children, right? Like, to a certain extent, you're going to have to let some of those things go in order to thrive. And it sounds like you're the type of person that unless it was forced upon you, you wouldn't do it. And I know in some cases, like, I'm that way. You only grow when you're forced to. And what I thought to myself personally is I do these workshops, and I got this from like a Navy SEAL, where he says when you're feeling anxiety or you're feeling nervous, you get a sheet of paper out and you write down everything that's bothering you, everything that you're concerned about, all the problems. And then everything that you're not in control of, that you can't do anything about, you cross that one off. You circle all the ones that you're in control of, and then you decide which ones can I take an action on today. And you take those actions. And anytime you're feeling that way, he goes through this process. And I thought that was genius.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's me. Yeah. Under 60. Oh.
Oh man. To hop on in. Kamau, when you were reading that, the first word that popped in my mind was the word gift. A lot of times we ask for certain gifts. A lot of times we pray for certain gifts. But the thing is, a lot of times we don't even have on the mind the gift that God is about to give us, because we couldn't even foresee or had the knowledge to even ask for that gift, knowing that we will probably need that gift down the road, or want that gift down the road, or that gift might even save your life or your mental health down the road. But the powerful thing about a gift is, and especially the gift that you didn't know that you needed, you never know that you need the gift until that day comes where you're yearning for that gift. So I know this is definitely a hard time right now, definitely mental hardship. But if you could really marinate on the word gift and see what that speaks to you and see how that can bring you to freedom of this situation right now that is happening, you might realize, and if you sit in silence, you might realize that that gift was everything that you needed to get you or your wife through some of your hardest times.
This is a tough one. I'd say the first word that comes to mind is faith. And I think this is a situation where that is required. This is not a situation where it's really a pivot or proceed moment. It's just a proceed moment. There's, of course, you always have the choice, but I think, if you're listening to this, you're likely a person of character. You're a man of character, and you're trying to take the right route. The challenge, I think, is putting to rest all the things that you can't control, all the things that you want to control, and all the things that are keeping you up at night. Like I know the feeling, even though I haven't got to that point in my life, but I've been sick. I've been sick thinking about stepping into something that big. And I think in moments like this, it really takes some digging into who you are and what you're about. And I think you first need to get at peace with yourself, to then show up and be that supportive foundation to your wife, to then show up and be that supportive foundation to the newborn. But it's going to take some growth and some sitting and some just being at peace with yourself and some faith. That one was a heavy one. So if you guys got a little something to add, just
what's so funny is what just came to mind, and this was a joke TikTok, mind you. Like he was like this fake, he does a fake entrepreneur and he cracks jokes. You know how entrepreneurs be on social media, like, I started my podcast with $2. Now I sold it for $200 million twice. It's like one of those things. He came in with this joke video and said this. He said, how would your mother explain your birth, that process? I said, she can't. He said, because miracles can't be explained. They can only be embraced. And I'm like, this don't feel like a joke. That's a bar, right? Like thinking about that, just his situation, right? You can't explain a miracle. The doctor telling you like, nah, this is impossible. And I don't know what's so frustrating and beautiful about life. You don't get to choose when you get a miracle. And sometimes the miracles are inconvenient. So it's just, I would just say embrace the miracle.
Yeah, I ditto that. I was talking to a relative, a cousin of mine the other day, and his last child is considered the oops baby, right? And he was telling me how he had things planned out. His oldest would be in college. Then from that point forward, there'd be the other two would be ready to go into college, and he would have like 3 more years, and him and wifey can live their life. And then oops happened. He was like, we're not where we wanted to be. By the time the littlest one was gonna go to college, we were gonna still be in the situation. So I think to what Zuri said was, this is a gift and a blessing for you to settle down and reevaluate your values, reevaluate your priorities, reevaluate your relationship, reevaluate the household, right? In the sense that children are an anomaly every single day, right? Especially in their youngest age. You don't know when they're gonna poop from when they're gonna burp. You don't know when they're gonna be hungry or cranky all night. So for a person who may be A-type, you know, be prepared to embrace the inevitable, which is a constant stream of chaos. Because at the end of the day, life is a constant stream of chaos. We just have to be of sound mind to realize how to navigate it. And I think you've all put it earlier is understand what you have control over. You have control over soothing, you have control over feeding, you have control over shelter, and you have control over cleaning the child. Beyond that, you can't tell him when he's going to be cranky, he or she's going to be cranky. You can't tell when he or she's going to be sick. You can only do the things that you can do to keep that child safe and taken care of. Those are the primary things you need to focus on. And anything beyond that, listen, you have a village to help. Don't think you're in this alone.
Beautiful.
There it is.
And just, I felt like, Paige, what you said is just such a smooth segment into a smooth segue into segment 3. You said reevaluate, reevaluate, reevaluate. And that's really what favorite failures is, right? You take a failure that at one point, this may have crushed you. This may have like been like, nah, this, I don't know how I get up from this. And now you look at it on the other side, you reevaluate, and it's like one of your favorite moments in life, one of your favorite experiences, not necessarily the failure itself, but what it turned you into, what opportunity it presented for you, how it made you pivot, how it made you proceed, and where you are now. So that is favorite failures. And just giving you the floor first, Paige, as our guest, do you have a favorite failure that you like to share?
Yeah. My favorite failures around relationship. You know, I had an amazing woman. I have a better one now. Married, babe. See, I got it on. I had to learn how to receive love overly abundant. And Tunji, the diasporan family, we don't really show a lot of affection. Some of us are stronger than the others. My mom grew up single, so she was more hard hand than soft. And so for me, it was not recognizing what unconditional love looked like. And so that put me into a space of seeking what that could look like for myself, going into therapy, understanding that. Prior to my wife, I was previously engaged, and I sought therapy to see if I deserved love. And, am I lovable? And that journey led me to, although the previous relationship didn't work out, it led me to continuously work on myself and realize I do. And when that abundance of love is coming and pouring into you and your cup is overflowing, that's okay. That uncomfortableness you get when, I used to mush my wife when we were first dating because she was all on top of me. I realized it's okay. Like, that's a love that only someone who truly loves you is willing to give. And, my mush wasn't a mush. It was more like I'm still uncomfortable with receiving that. And so having gone from being uncomfortable with receiving it to letting her come on me to realizing this is what love is, a year and a half later, we got married. Like, not trying to be cliche of being like for love at first sight or love at first text or whatever it was, because we met on a dating app. But it was one of those things where I remember telling her for the first time, I got you. I got you. If you don't want to go back to work, I got you. If you need me to help take care of something, I got you. Like, as a man, I felt like I was finally at a place where I can give the love that I'm supposed to and capable of giving and receiving it and accepting it the way she's supposed to and able to give it. So I think my biggest failure was not acknowledging the fact that I'm deserving of love. And the fact that I felt like I had to reciprocate it a particular way in order to receive it again was my mistake, because I didn't know who I was and what I truly deserved.
Man, this mic is hot. I want to hop in really quickly because of everything you said, Paige. The question of, am I lovable, stabbed me in the gut, because we're human. We all make mistakes, whether it's romantically, whether it's with family, whether it's friend wise, we all make mistakes. And for so long, and it seems like you can relate to this, I thought that my mistakes canceled out the reason that I would be lovable, even though I had family that showed me love. But getting in a relationship, I would just kind of timid back, or I'm a very, how can I explain that? I give a lot, right? Like I will fill someone's cup up to the brim, and I'm a fixer. So when I made those mistakes, I felt that since I kind of jumped out of who I am and I was oblivious to who I really was and who God made me to be, I thought that my mistakes held a lot more weight. I thought that I was responsible a little bit more because of who I know God made me to be. So as yourself, I entered into therapy, and I mean, therapy is so funny because the therapist could ask one question and I just burst out into tears, or you just burst out and not even knowing that emotion was built up that entire time. And once you really start to answer the questions in therapy, you're the one that answers those questions. It's not the therapist. And that brings such power. You almost gain your power back in therapy because you know you're not crazy. You know you're lovable. Sometimes you just have to talk yourself through it. So I just really wanted to hop in and say that question is really the start of self-love journey. Is really the start of knowing knowing who you are and knowing you're lovable. But that question is also the start of you looking at someone else and looking them in their eyes and knowing that they don't love you like they might say they do. Right? Or knowing that you all are not capable to be together, or you all are on that same level, right? So I think that if we could continue to ask that question, am I lovable, and be real about it, you might open you might open your heart to a realm that, like you said, might be uncomfortable. But I think love is supposed to be uncomfortable, though. I don't think that it's supposed to be just this smooth road, right? I think you're supposed to, it's almost like a math problem, and it's supposed to be, because it leads you back to who you are, it leads you back to who God is, and it leads you back to whoever the person is at that time that, you're taking that journey with.
And I want to add to that, Tunji has said something on the State of the Black Man's Mental Health, the episode where we talk about how Black men love. He was like, he was loved on. You know what I mean? And he still found himself in a place where he wanted to make sure he was at a place to be able to continue to love. And so he's made decisions for himself to move forward. And I think as Black men, sometimes we don't know if that love is unconditional, right? We don't know if that love comes with, well, I love you this much unless you do X for me. And the brothers on that panel had literally fire to speak for a good hour and a half about how love is the crux of how we move, whether it's the love of self or love for a significant other. It moves us, right? And it sounds like everyone here is in the gift of giving out of pure sincerity of our hearts to those in need. And sometimes that the reason love is uncomfortable is because we sometimes lose ourselves in it.
When I tell you, like, I'm over here lost in my heart and lost in my mind, because specifically for me with Black women, Right. I'm the youngest of 9, 7 older sisters. And his page said, Black women have loved me correctly my entire life. I know nothing else. So when people say other like perspectives, I'm the other end of the spectrum. So when you say most blessed man alive, even with my personal relationships, people are, oh, these women shiesty. I don't know that, right? I've been the one that has done wrong, right? I don't know that being played. I've been the one to play people. So when I go to this other side now, like I have to deal with that fear of, can I love this person like they deserve to be loved? Can I love this person? That's the question I'm asking myself. That's the question I go to therapy for, because like, if I'm not gonna love a Black woman correctly, leave her alone. That's what I be telling myself all the time. Like, leave her alone. Let her live her life. So she relax.
You know what's funny is that you have to reteach yourself that, because that's beaten out of us when we're young. We're like, nah, hell nah. Like you go hop down.
But yeah, so that's just what I was thinking when Paige was talking. Zuri, like, yo, because when you say you love freely, I love with a sense of responsibility. Because I know all that was poured into me came at a cost. Came at a cost. When you talk about I'm the youngest, so all these older siblings had a sense of responsibility. That's my little brother. Aunties, that's nephew. Mama, this my baby. And then going out into the world with all this love, and then people radiate to you, and then you see yourself taking advantage of it without even realizing it. And then like life sits you down, and you have to look at yourself and be like, is this who I'm going to become? And like you said, Kamau, you have to actively talk to yourself to move different. Because if you don't, you become a monster. And for me, it's being so vision operated that you can take people's love for granted. Right? People are trying desperately to love you, and you 6th, 7th on my priority list. Right? Like, and that makes you a monster.
Don't forget talking about leaving that man behind that door.
Kamau
You
losing
let
it.
that man outside from behind that door, it becomes a different. If you turn into a different Tunji, like and the other thing that Tunji had mentioned was like, let's not forget that person, because we can easily turn into that person.
Oh yeah.
And as Kamau mentioned, like we don't want to turn into that person. We have to constantly remind ourselves, if we don't watch how we move, we can easily open that door and that monster comes out.
Yeah.
And it's not always in a misogynist way. It's a absent-mindedness. It's a, you know what, I'm gonna take my priorities over yours. It's gonna be a I ain't got the time to give it to you. And it's not a man versus woman type of thing or what might have you. It's, we let that monster in, they cloud our judgment. And the love that the people we're trying to give it to fades away. You know what I mean? And so, like I said, like Tunji dropped some dimes, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to bring some of this back up on his show, because I can't just take it all for myself. You know what I mean?
Nah, and what Paige is referring to, I said, is if you pretend that you didn't make the mistakes you made, your failures. If you pretend that you weren't that person, the day you start pretending, the day you forget is the day you start becoming that person again. You are like, part of it is the pain of who you were, that mistake, that failure, that helps you move forward, that helps you become somebody new. So it's like you have to be true to that old version of you that was flawed, that made the mistakes, that was the monster, in order to grow. And the day you forget that you were a monster, the day you forget that you were apathetic, the day that you forget that you were emotionless, the day you forget that you hurt that person, is the day you start hurting somebody else.
Sheesh.
So for me, it's right, it's reflecting and digging into the memory that hurts in order to be who you want to be, in order to grow.
You got me speechless over here, bro. I'm just like.
And what you're saying, what first came to mind, Tunji, that latter statement, is that hurt people hurt people.
Effortlessly.
Effortlessly, obliviously, right?
I'm telling you.
Hurt people. And the most saddest part about that is sometimes people don't even know that they're hurting.
Unintentionally.
People can't even find the root factor, the root why of why they're hurting, but they're just continuing to date. They're continuing to seek. They're continuing to accept, right? And I think the most powerful thing about that is once you finally intentionally, like you said, Kamau, realize why you're hurting people, you solve that equation, you start to see how you hurt yourself in the process too, of who you might have lost, or who and who you might have lost sometimes is yourself. You know, in this love, we can even take someone else out of the equation because we weren't put on this world to hurt people. We were only put on this world to love effortlessly and without even knowing that it's love. Like you said, Tunji, it seems like you're the type of lover where you're paying it forward because you were loved so well. You're paying that back to someone who deserves that. But when we are hurting and we don't know why, it could be your inner child that's hurting, that you haven't even coupled with or understood why, right? It could be family hurt. It could be a number of things. But until we really understand why we're hurting someone, and that someone can be yourself, you're not going to give someone the love that they deserve or that you deserve yourself.
I'm gonna hop in here to speak on the monster piece real quick, because I think it takes a certain level of maturity to even see that side of you as a monster. I think for a lot of us men growing up, that's the hero. That monster is the victor. That's him. That's what we were. That's what we grew up to believe. That's who we cultivated. That is a killer. And I feel like we were never taught on how to channel that. You know, that is the masculinity that is just on fire, the rage, the just like the vehicle and the vessel for this gift, right, of testosterone. Like it's just on full display. The charm, the dash, the wink, the smile, the joke, you know, the smoothness, like all of that. That's a trained assassin, you know, like that didn't just get there, right? We had to cultivate that, right? And so to get to a stage in life where that now is the monster is it's like you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're like, how? You know, like you were this loved being that I cultivated. You did great things. And now you're the monster, you know, now you're my enemy. And it's like that realization is so crazy, you know, and I feel like that's why it's a continual self-talk with yourself, because that monster doesn't always sound like the monster. He sounds like your best friend. He sounds like the guy you want to go hang out with, to have a drink with, that'll just ease all of the pressure, stress, and responsibilities of what true manhood looks like, right? So it's just that like, to me, it's the acknowledgement that, like, man, my past self is a monster, you know. And
you know what's crazy about that is, my apologies, what's crazy about that, I know exactly when the monster came, and it came out of heartbreak, which goes back to hurt people. It was one of those, for me, it was one of those situations where I literally was feeling this woman, and it was one of those situations where she just did me dirty. And from that point forward, it was a conscious effort to never let someone treat me like that ever again. And that led to the dismissals, that led to the unconscious like treatment of people, that led to the savagery. And for me, it took a while for me to realize that is what I was cultivating. I didn't grow up doing that. I grew up like Tunji, like I was loved on. You know, I was raised by all women. So I know how to treat women. But it got to a point where it was like, you the nice guy, and then the nice guy get, part of my French, you know, dunked on. And then next thing you know, when that nice guy turns bad, it becomes a problem for everybody. And it, like I said, going to therapy made me realize like I was cultivating a bad guy, and not to forget who he is or who he was, but to realize who I don't want to turn back into, which led me to being able to find the woman of my life, babe, the woman of my life.
And what I think is so powerful about like what you said, Kamau, when I think about how we fall in love with the monster, and just because the majority believes a certain thing doesn't mean it's right. Because a certain stage along the way, this quote unquote monster now is a level of clarity, and like you said, Kamau, with growth. But a certain pocket in life, you the GOAT, you the champ, like you winning. This is supposedly a beautiful thing. And this, I think, almost manipulated, altered form of what masculinity is. Because when I look at true men that I respect, great men, when they walk into the room, everyone feels bigger. Everyone feels more capable. And I think this is just great human beings in general, but specifically speaking to great men. And when I look at me in certain phases of that space, I was a fake version of that great man. I knew how to make people feel a certain way because I had a motive, because I had an agenda, because I had something I wanted to take, not give. And that's the difference, right? And that going back to that open hand, having something you blessed with so much, you have something to give. And my focus is to be blessed with so much that I'm constantly giving. And I'll have this conversation with myself and people all the time. Like, if it's any type of relationship dynamic, like, yo, I don't want to take from you. And I have to consciously say it out loud. And you know, when you say something to a person, but you say it to yourself too, like, I don't want to take from you. Like, what does giving look like? And it's just such a conscious thing in order to, like you said, like knowing who you were so you can know who you are now. And really for me, knowing who I am is knowing who I want to be. So it's low-key living in a future version of myself, like, yo, what would future Tunji do? And I look at past Tunji, I'm like, not that. not
That's
that.
real.
So, okay, let's start looking down the spectrum.
You know, I wanted to hop in on the favorite failure piece if I could switch gears a little bit, because this one is it's an interesting favorite failure of mine. It's interesting to consider it a favorite, but like I'm in the middle of it. And it's something that I actually anticipated was going to happen. And I've been living in Mexico going on 2 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
And one of the things that I remember before I was preparing is most of my life happens online. And I wasn't really worried about the relationships and maintaining them because even when I was in the States, a lot of my life still happened online. Like friends I had who were 35 minutes away, I probably text them more on Instagram than we actually hung out, you know. And it was just a season of busyness for me and then people I'm around. And so I was always kind of accustomed and felt that I could maintain my American life pretty much anywhere I went. But one of the concerns I had was, am I going to be able to plug into the community around me? You know, am I going to be able to feel like this place that I'm choosing, wherever I'm setting my feet, my bags, my head, is this my home? And I feel like, to me, it never feels like your home or your hood unless you know the people in it, unless you have those relationships, unless you have those experiences and those stories and what have you. And I'm really struggling with this right now, is because I'm not going to say that I'm opposed to embracing the localness. But I feel like in terms of my priority is green, it's cash, it's money, it's progress, it's business, it's building, it's empire. none of those things, to me, they don't equate to the local relationships, the spending the time, the relaxing, the getting the drinks, the just quality time that you spend with people. It's a very different energy. And for me, and there's been a couple of signs that have came up in my life where it's just like, where's your head at? Is it in the present, or is it on the future? Is it in the present? Like, are you really looking at the opportunity that you have in front of you, or are you focused on something else? And I know I'm focused on something else. And I knew I was going to be focused on something else. And I'm still here, you know? And I feel like people who I have met in my local community, they're getting like 15% of me. They're getting a very half-ass version of Kamau, half-ass relationship, half-ass energy, just because I'm not here. And it's this interesting component in terms of favorite failure. Like, just because it's a favorite failure because like I know the solution, but it's very hard for me to want to solve it, you know? Like I have a challenge and a problem, and I know something that would be good. But there is I guess, resistance to the shuffling of priorities.
And also, what comes to mind for you is I don't even really need to ask a question because I know you well enough at this point to say that those relationships with strong people around you, with the people around you, fills your cup. So when we talk about filling your cup early and that being intentional about self-care, it's understanding that I need to fill my cup with these people around me in order to get the bag, in order to be that Kamau that can go to different places and have this energy. Because it's in Atlanta, you took it for granted that this filled your cup because it was natural, it was comfortable, the work wasn't as necessary. I could send an Instagram video that reminds us of a memory from 2 years ago, and we laugh about that memory and building a new one. But out there, you have to consciously build these new memories to fill your cup, to be the Kamau you want to be. So I think it's really that perspective change of reminding yourself that, yo, this fills my cup. And every time you don't fill your cup, like, my G, that's a failure. Like, I'm failing myself.
It is.
Yeah. And what came to my mind when you were speaking on that, Kamau? There are many seasons in our life, and seasons change. Some seasons are only for elevation. Some seasons are building community. Some seasons are maybe moving back home to get yourself together. I think it's always imperative to really be still and figure out what season are we in to make sure that we get the most out of that season. Whether you're going through your rainy season, right? Whether you're going through the most happy sunshine season, you can call it summer. Whether you're going through spring, where you get a little rain, but it's also sunny as well. Whether it's winter, your season is winter, right? Whether you're just cold and you might be under the weather a lot and you might be, going through your anxiety or depression. But see, to take it out of weather, you also might have isolation. And really being still and seeing which season you're in, whether it's isolation, whether you are needed in areas to build community and to talk and commute and to understand a culture that you are getting familiar with, but still might not 100% understand. That season that you're in, if you really take it for what it is, no matter what you thought it would be, you're going to come out on the other side so thankful that you were a little confused on where you needed there, or why you needed there, because you have the how down packed, right? You got there, you figured out how to get there, but that why piece is a kicker. I mean, that's something that can really take us to that fear, and we don't want to question the why so much that we end up in fear, that we end up in regret. But being appreciative of the blessing of even having to ask yourself why. See, that's the thing. A lot of times within these seasons, people don't understand that it's a blessing to even be confused on why you've been planted somewhere, because a lot of people don't have that luxury, as we were talking about with traveling earlier. So really understanding that season that you're in, and that might help with the next steps of, do I really try to go out and meet a lot of people and build that here? Or if I'm in isolation, how do I not go crazy, with isolation, but really get what I need out of this, and me being content with that, it's just you and your girl in isolation, or just you, so really just figuring out that season can really be a first step, at least.
Yeah, I want to add to that. So we had a guest on the Get My Cheese on My Cracker platform, and she mentioned that during certain months of the year, she takes inventory of the months prior. And so when you're in these seasons of isolation, or if you recognize it's actually it's a habit, or it's you can kind of time when these things are happening. In that moment, take account for what you've accomplished. Take account for all the things that's been done. I think Zuri mentioned earlier, take account for the gifts you've received prior to that moment, and allow those gifts to kind of encourage you, right? Because we go through life in ebbs and flows, and sometimes our low points, we forget that we've had more highs than we had low. All right. Give yourself credit for, this is just one instance in a series of 9 months of wins. Right. Because maybe around this time is a season which you need to hibernate, or you need to sit down and be thankful and be grateful and take inventory of what's been done, and start strategically planning for what is to come. Because if you're prepared for what's to come, you at least know, all right, I know how I got here. Now, these are the steps that I've already prepared myself for to kind of move out of it. And in those cases, I'm not saying you're not going to be in a funk, but you at least know that there are things that are in place for me to get out of it when I'm ready to get out of it. Sometimes, like I said, with the question I was asked, lean into it. The process isn't easy. The more you lean into it, the more you realize what you're made of.
Just jumping in, I feel like that, again, that reflection, going into that inventory, closes out perfectly with glows and grows, right? Taking that inventory of what's going on in our lives right now, and just glows, grows, and a soundtrack to that grow or glow, your choice. And I'll start off, and my glow is, right now I'm in Oakland. I gave 2 speeches this week to my students, at Kid Bridge Academy. They're not my students, but my kids. Like, when I tell you, I was talking to myself saying, like, yo, teach them like you're yours, because they are. Mm-hmm. Teach them. And then when I tell you, it was an out-of-body experience, because I looked at this one chocolate baby girl, 8th grader, and she looked just like one of my 7th graders from 6 years ago. It was scary. Like, when I tell you, I almost walked over and hugged her, and I'm like, Tunji, this is not your baby. She do not know you. Relax. Right? Right? It was a trip, but then it just reminded me, like, you prayed for something, you asked for something, and now it's in your face. They are yours. So that was just the glow, like, and jumping right into the soundtrack for the glow was I Wonder by Kanye West, like that graduation album. 2008, that was the year I graduated high school, and just how it goes, I wonder, do you know what it feels to have your dreams come true? And I just kept playing that all week, because to speak something into existence 10 years ago and not know what it looks like, how you get there, not know, and just keep saying it over and over again, and refusing to let a dream die, and then to be living it through ups and downs, lefts and rights, pivots and proceeds. Just the blessings are heavy. And it means more because of the failures. Because now, if I didn't teach for those 7 years, I wouldn't have a student to look at and have that out-of-body experience. So, and then my grow is, I did a workshop today with 5th graders and I got humbled. That was not age appropriate. I was like, yay. When I tell you that took so much energy, like my voice almost gone. And it's just like one of those things of, okay, we chasing mastery. We chasing being able to step in any environment, any age group, and it really being exceptional. And I don't like the fact that my voice is almost gone, and I just want to grow as a speaker. I want to grow as a workshop facilitator. I just want to grow. So I'm really sad. I'm really happy with the fact of, even though things are going really well, I'm not satisfied, that I want to continue to grow.
One thing that your story about the little girl reminded me of is on the first Black Panther, when they're in Oakland. I think they were in Oakland, and it was like that moment of like Michael B. Jordan just like, this is my hood, but this is not like where I'm from, and just that, but that recognizing that familiarity, and I think when he went to Wakanda, like he's seeing a lot of the same faces, and it's just like that connection point between two hoods that have never met, that they don't even know each other exists, right? But it's that those same souls, those same people, those same like things that are happening in that community.
Thanks.
I'll hop in. For this week, I'm gonna put my glow and grow together. So my glow and grow for this week definitely is finally realizing that just because God placed you in an environment to elevate you and place you on your path to pivot into your purpose doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. And if not, this path is going to be harder, because what's on the other side of fear and what's on the other side of this being hard is that your cup will be overflowing once you get through that hardness. And we were talking about leaning into it. So once you lean into that this path actually is not easy, the knowledge and the confidence and the faith, that mustard seed starts to grow. And by the time you look back at it, that mustard seed is now a mountain that you can pull other people up with you to your purpose. So that's definitely my glow and grow. I've had a pretty challenging week. I've been in rooms where, and I'm just gonna say it, everybody is smarter than me. I've been in those type of rooms this past week, and I walk out the room smarter, but I'm drained. But it's a good drained. I've noticed that I've been I'm usually I usually don't drop the ball that much. I usually have things together, but this week it's been a blessing to just let go and just let God just do his thing. And just I've been really stuck on the fact that I just haven't been the smartest in the room, and it's uncomfortable only when I let my mind keep rambling on that thought instead of saying, actually, I would have rather this for right now for this season. Because on the other side of this, my dreams have a bigger chance of being met. Because when your dreams are bigger than you have to take seasons to not be the smartest in the room. You have to be humble. You have to raise your hand and ask a question and be scared to ask, because everybody else in this room knows the answer to this question, right? And you just have to pray that things start to stick for you to get you closer to yours. And for my soundtrack, I've been listening to a lot of Sir. That's my guy. Just his whole album just rides, and his intro and outro really speaks to a journey, right? He starts the album as like an individual speaking over a speaker on the plane, and you just know that he's about to take you on a journey. And by the time that album ends, you just feel that you got lost in the music. And I just feel like we're always on a journey, and this new journey of mine of just not being the smartest in the room definitely feels like I'm gonna land soon, but right now it's some turbulence and I'm pretty uncomfortable. So yeah.
And
Go
just
ahead.
to put a little stank on that, Zuri. So what came to my mind is African proverb that hit me the other week when you talk about being in these spaces. The African proverb is the plant God favors grows even without the rain. So it's like God put you in a drought because, okay, let's see if you're a favorite, because the favorite grows in the desert. The favored one is like, God's like, I don't got to worry about my baby. I put her in the desert and she's still going to grow in that uncomfortable situation, in that drought, with that little bit of water. I'm going to come back and the favored one is going to grow. And that's why your cup is overflowing, because you take that little bit of water and you still cook. So
Come on.
cook.
Come on.
Okay. So I'll step in real quick. I think my glow and grow, I'll do the same thing, isn't the same thing. It's this last trip to Dubai. It's funny you mentioned plants growing in the desert. The UAE is comprised of 7 different kingdoms coming together and building something out of nothing. Dubai is only about 50 plus years old. Abu Dhabi is a bit old. Like, as formulated states, that puts you into perspective that we are fortunate out here to have been in established hoods. You know what I mean? And the glow was, for me, getting that country off my bucket list. The grow is wanting to see more, wanting to experience more, wanting to go further. And on our way back, this goes back to like what I was talking about, being financially in a good place. And this is just random, right? Like, my wife and I wanted to see if we can get an upgrade. It's the first time I didn't have to worry about paying for the upgrade. It sounds minuscule and kind of, shallow to some, but like a 12-hour trip in coach ain't the same like a 12-hour trip in business class when you can lay all the way out. That itself was an amazing experience. So that was that soundtrack. My mind can't pinpoint one particular soundtrack, but I could say right now, Pharrell's Happy is kind of where I'm at right now.
Nice.
I love that. Yeah, I think my grow is compromise. And that's a tough one for somebody who's strong-willed, somebody who feels like I can move mountains. And I think it's compromising is often thought of as involuntary. It's thought of as weak. It's thought of as submitting. And I think I've thought about it as such. And I know a reframe is necessary, that I need to step into this with faith. And that's a little tough for me. So that's kind of where I'm at, though, is that I know I don't necessarily, I can't like control the end result. I can't map it out exactly how I want it. I can't even get the promise that compromising is going to equate to what I want. But the choice is, it feels necessary. It's just one of those heart things, gut things, that it's just like, choose it and have faith. The glow, I don't know. The glow's life. The glow is life. I'm alive, I'm still in the race, like I'm not dead. I'm not in jail. I'm blessed and highly favored. So the work, it's an uphill climb, but I'm in the race. My soundtrack is something a little out of pocket for me, but it's a little R&B vibe. Got Black on the feature, and the artist is Jesse Reyes or Reyes. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but it came across on like an Instagram reel, and bro, she eats the first fucking verse. Like, I ran that shit back 30 plus times all day. I was just repeat, just like, and I would even have to cut it halfway through the song to run her one verse back. It was just one of those songs. Like, there's not a lot that happens to me, but Forever by Jesse Raised in Black, running it back again and again and again.
Before we get out of here, I do want to circle back to something just really quickly, won't take long. But Tunji, after I was done with my Grow and Glow, you said something that just shattered the mic. And I want to speak to that. You were speaking on how God says when you're in rooms that you might be uncomfortable or, you know, the least smart, you said he will say, you don't have to worry about her. She'll be all right. God will give you everything you need in the midst of confusion or in the midst of rooms that you might feel that you don't belong. So for you to say that, that was so powerful, because a lot of times we want to always just lean on what we think we're doing. We're hot shot. I know I'm smart enough. And then you become humbled in a room where you're like, I have so much further to go to get to where I know I'm being pulled to. And to know that we already have everything we need, to your personality, to your knowledge, to the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you vibe, whatever it is, we really do have everything we need stored inside of us. And I just had to leave that on the mic before we got out of here.
Absolutely. Like, and what I guess before we close out, what you said was so powerful to me is you said that it takes humility to raise your hand. And you think, God said, asking you shall receive.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it so crazy that God put you in a room that all you have to do is ask and you shall receive information you need. Because you said everybody else in the room knows the answer to this question. And God put you in a room where everybody else knows the answer. And all you have to do is have humility. That is it. So guys, like, she good. She can have humility. So that being said, for we take too much more time, if no one told you today, we love you. Appreciate you, Paige, for being here with us, being our fourth co-host on this episode, not just our guest, but really becoming a part of who we are. We appreciate you. So much love. Look forward to more communication, more of us growing together. That being said, we love you. And for every pivot you have in a life, may it be followed by a proceed. Till next time.
Peace.